Did you ever find yourself thinking about your goals, but lacking the motivation to start working on them? You know, when you have one of those days when, somehow, everything feels hard to do. You feel tired, you are not motivated anymore, and you just want to lay down and can't seem to start what you said you would do today. Instead, you spend the day playing video games, scrolling on social media, and doing anything that gets you distracted instead of focusing on your goal. Somehow, you just can't manage to get started and take action. Before going to sleep, you watch a motivational speech and think, tomorrow will be the day. Tomorrow it's gonna be the first day of the rest of my life. Yet, tomorrow arrives, and again, you fall into the same pitfalls. It's one more day where you don't take action. Does this sound familiar? This has happened to me so many times. I really cannot tell you how many times. Like just end of last year, I wanted to start working out more regularly in the evenings after work, but every day I would just arrive home so tired and I would just never feel like it. I would just leave it for another day. The last time this happened to me was actually with this YouTube channel. You see, for a while I was looking into some way to let my creativity flow, and I got really passionate about filmmaking and the idea of starting a YouTube channel. So as you can imagine, I started reading everything about filmmaking, storytelling, scripting, titles, thumbnails, the YouTube algorithm. But when the time to really work and start writing that script came, I just never felt inspired and I would just leave it for another day, which again would never come. But recently, I've been reading a lot about habit creation and all the science behind motivation and action, and I just really want to share 4 tips that have really helped me to transform my motivation into action. Let me show you. The first important thing to understand is the relationship between motivation and action. Because sure, motivation is important. It means we have that desire and the willingness to do something, like going for a run, or maybe cooking healthier or doing some exercise. But we can have the desire to do something and still choose not to do it, right? Most people think that is motivation the thing leading into action, and it flows in a unique direction. You first feel the motivation and then you take action. But the reality is that action is not only a consequence of the motivation, but it can also be the cause of that motivation. And that brings us to the first tip, which you'll often hear as the do something principle, the 2-minute rule, the just do it rule, you name it. In essence, all these techniques are about entering the motivation action loop by taking a small action, which will lead to motivation, leading to keep on taking action, leading to more motivation, and it just keeps this self-feeding loop running. Personally, the one that really worked for me is the 5-minute rule. This rule is very simple. It's all about committing to do something for 5 minutes, after which you are free to stop and do whatever you want. So for example, in my case, when I would arrive home after work, instead of going directly to my couch, I would set up a timer on my phone and convince myself to work on this video for just 5 minutes. And I must say, after those 5 minutes, I would just continue working, and eventually those 5 minutes would become 1 hour. The thing is, in most of the cases, the biggest obstacle between you and your goal is actually getting started to work on it. Getting started is where most of the friction relies. And talking about friction, this brings us to the second tip of this video, which is setting up your environment for success. So let's say, for example, your goal is to go get a run every morning. Then you could leave your sneakers next to your bed so they are ready to go in the morning. In that way, once you wake up, all you need to do is put on your sneakers, which will be conveniently available, and get out of your house. The goal here is to remove all obstacles between you and getting started and make it very easy to take that first step and eliminate all the excuses that your brain will come up with during the process. And for example, if your goal is to journal every night, then you could just place your journal and pen on your pillow so it's already there before you go to sleep. Or if you plan to read more, you could just leave the book you're reading next to your couch. And this also works the other way around. Sometimes the key is not about making it easier to take action, but it's actually to make it more difficult to get started with those bad habits that are not allowing us to work towards your goal. And one way you can do that is by increasing the friction of getting started with those bad habits. So for example, if you spend your evenings just playing video games and afterwards you regret doing so, you could just try to unplug the power cord of your PlayStation whenever you are done playing with it. And that would make that first step of playing video games a bit more difficult. So then next time when you're confronted with the choice of reading or playing, you'll be more likely to choose your book, as that will be the easiest option to start. And if that doesn't work, you can just keep on increasing the friction even further. So you could, for example, store your PlayStation in a closet every time you finish playing and tell yourself you can only start playing once you have read the book for at least 5 minutes. The main goal here is to ensure that you have to take a large step to get started with your bad habit, and you can get started with your good habit by just taking a very small step. And moving on to the third tip, something that really worked for me is breaking up a task in very small steps, and the point here is to make them so small that you just cannot say no to them. Because what happens sometimes is that if we dream too big, we can easily become overwhelmed with all the things that need to be done and just don't take action. So let's take as an example my dream of starting this YouTube channel. If you start to think of all the things you need to do for a YouTube channel, you need to create the script, you need to create the shooting list, you need to record it, you need to edit the video, you need to create a thumbnail, you need to come up with a title. There is just so much to do to publish just one video that it's very easy to feel overwhelmed by the task and decide to do something else that takes less effort, like just watching another YouTube video on how to create YouTube videos. In such cases, something that really worked for me is just thinking, what is the next smallest step I can take to bring myself forward and get closer to my goal? And I literally mean like the smallest step you can take. So for example, when I had to write the script for this video, the very first step was setting up the laptop and opening Notion. And that's such a small step to do that I just couldn't say no to it, because I mean, come on, it's just opening a laptop and opening Notion. Like, seriously, it takes no effort. And then once Notion was open, the smallest next step was just writing down some bullet points on topics to cover in the video. Again, something very small that I could not say no to, and it would just keep me moving towards my goal. And then the next thing would be writing down the first paragraph. This in the end would make each task very manageable, and it would just keep the momentum going without feeling anxious about all the things to be done, just focusing on the very next task. And finally, and this might be the tip that works best for me, is just make it very hard for yourself to not take action. Paraphrasing Steven Pressfield in his book The War of Art, when it's about taking action, at some point, the pain of not doing it becomes greater than the pain of doing it. So imagine, for example, that you would have a dripping faucet in your bathroom. You might think that's not too much of a problem and just let it leak for a few weeks before getting the willpower to go and fix it. But now imagine if that same faucet would be leaking so much that it could start flooding your house. You'd probably go immediately to fix it, as nobody wants to have a flooded home, right? Well, that same principle also applies when it's about taking action to achieve your goal. So basically, if you can make the consequence of not taking action negative enough, it will just give you no other choice than actually take action. And a way you can do that is by adding a financial incentive. So let's imagine that you would like to work out 4 times a week. You could just tell about that goal to a friend of yours, and basically every time you go to the gym, take a picture of yourself to prove to your friend that you are committing to that goal. And if one day you don't do it, then maybe you need to pay him 200 euros that then he can spend in any way he wants. In that way, they will help to keep you accountable of your actions, because there is a big financial incentive for them, and at the same time, you will have that urge of taking action because you just don't want to lose 200 euros because one day you missed a workout, right? And if for some reason you don't want to tell your friends about your goals, you can also use some apps like Beeminder or Stick, which essentially they serve the same purpose. You commit to a certain goal, and if you don't deliver on it, you need to pay a certain amount of money. Like I said when I started this video, I had a long period of time of procrastination where my motivation was just continuously fading away. But since I started implementing these 4 tips, I actually felt more motivated than ever to continue working towards my goal, and didn't have any more that feeling of guilt after spending another day without doing anything productive. And I actually managed to finish my first YouTube video while combining it with a full-time corporate job, which is quite an achievement for me. So I hope these 4 tips will really inspire you to take action and move towards your goal. And if you took any value from this video, I would love it if you would leave a like or a comment below. I'm gonna read them all and reply to them. And thanks so much for your time. See you next time. Bye.